for May the 20th. Before we get going here, I don't think I can get any more emails with condolences for my Leafs, so I'm going to leave that one alone. Mr. Roswell and Mr. Coleman, I appreciate that, but thank you for that. We're moving on. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Chambers, we believe, is on his way. We haven't heard otherwise, and we'll see when he shows up from there. Agenda. Anybody have anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none. Approval of the agenda. Mayor Bailey, oh, there's Councillor Chambers right there. And Mr. Councillor Oakley, thank you. Councillor Chambers, welcome. Any questions on that? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, any at this time? Seeing none, just let me know if there is any as we go through. Delegations, we got a few delegations today, so we will go through them, starting with Jim Bruzy. I think he's online. Jim, are you there? You're on mute. Okay. Go ahead. You have 10 minutes. If you could just give your name and address, if you would, please. You can share your screen, Jim. Sorry, was there somebody else there? Just let me just see if we've got the presentation, Jim. 1 second. Can you see it there, Jim? Oh. Okay, yep. Okay. Okay, thanks for that, Jim. Any questions from committee? Councillor Miller.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Jim. Yeah, appreciate the presentation. It's a bit of the same old with us. Everything costs more than we think it's going to cost, and we never have enough reserves most of the time. But I wanted to ask, because we talked about the asset management plan, and in that context, when we're looking at costs and what we have to spend in the future, one of the big determinants is the quality, I guess, of whatever we're building. In other words, if we go for lower standards, we're not going to spend as much money. So when we're talking stormwater management, who sets the standards? Is that a provincial standard? Is that a municipal standard? First question.
Dave?
So, sorry, through the chair, procedural is still a little different for me. It is provincial standards, so it's through the MECP. It is our CLI ECA. I believe the county here in the last couple of years, looking at Andrea, moved to that, so it is a provincial standard. And then I know that, here at the county, we do add to it through our engineering design standards as well, so we expand on it. There's a lot of flexibility in that standard that's issued from the MECP, and then we build on that, so trench details, things like that, et cetera.
Okay, and then, so following on that, then as far as the standards go, are they changing at all? Are they becoming more robust, or they are what they are and they have been that way for a long time?
Dave?
So through the chair, they're developing, and there's more of a focus on, flood mitigation and the quality of the stormwater that we're producing. So there's, how would I explain this? It's more of an environmental protection. Historically, you could have a stormwater pond or a stormwater infrastructure direct outletting into a receiving body, and now that's being updated. That's why we're seeing a lot more control. And as we develop and build more homes, we need to control the shock of stormwater into those receiving bodies and, our environment.
Okay, thank you. I know we got a report later on this in the program, and I'll ask a couple more questions there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our presenter. Your table, which I think is a 2024 AMP study, is actually quite a good scorecard, at least as far as I would read it. It looks like we have lots of useful life left in our existing assets. So I am supportive of the idea of gradually phasing in a reserve. It doesn't appear to be immediately necessary, so we shouldn't put any more burden on the taxpayer than we have to. Thank you.
Definitely. Any other questions from committee? Okay, seeing none, how would you like to go forward with this? Councillor Coleman?
Move to receive, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Kyle. No further questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, 4.2, we have MJMA Architect and Design for the Brant Sports Complex expansion. My understanding is this may take a little bit more than 10 minutes, so can we get committee to Councillor Howes, Councillor Kyle to go more than 10 minutes? No issues. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Phil, go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Council. I thought I would start out prior to MJMA's presentation to give you a high-level summary of the process we've gone through so far and what we're recommending as next steps. It is probably the biggest project since the Brant Sports Complex itself for community services, and it's quite complicated, so I thought I would just kind of give you an executive summary before we dig into it. I'd also like to introduce the project team. So myself, Kathy Ballantyne, Stacey Allens, Dana McKelvey, Sarah Dredge, Matt Plumstead, and Sean Jacob. They're all here today to answer questions that you might have. I'd also like to thank staff that have assisted us from operations, finance, and planning. It's been a big collaborative effort, and they did a ton of work as well behind the scenes for us. From MJMA Architects, we have Mark Downing and Monica Luong here. They can show their hands. They'll be up here soon. Kyung Sun Her also was a big part of it. He's not here today as part of the presentation. So the original design in 2019 was recosted early on in the process. And in our capital forecast for 2026 construction, we have $22.8 million. Well, the revised construction estimate based on that same design was upwards of $38 million. And that is called Design Option 1, 51,000 square feet in your design packages. So of course, it was deemed not financially feasible. And so we started a thorough re-review of the needs with staff. And we also re-engaged with our community partners, and a scaled-down design was well received by the community. With the program vetted, we costed the scaled-down version. The issue was it was still approaching $32 million, and in your packages, it's Design Option 2, 38,000 square feet. And again, the project team deemed that this option wasn't financially feasible. So with the assistance of third-party consultants, we completed a value engineering process that moved many of the meeting rooms and staff spaces to the second floor to reduce the overall cost to $28.3 million. And that, in your packages, is called Design Option 3 Preferred, 38,000 square feet. From there, costs were reviewed by finance staff with respect to our long-term financial plan. The increased cost of $5.5 million above the $22.8 million in the capital forecast would result in the county surpassing its self-imposed annual repayment limit of 15% in 2027, ahead of the current projection of 2028. Other considerations: parking. Planning staff are supportive of a minor variance for the proposed 387 spaces. There's two ways to calculate parking, and they produce different requirements. The good thing is that we did have operations look at some additional parking for us. So they did a design for us, and we can add an upper parking area between Rest Acres and the existing upper parking as a standalone project in the future for about $900,000. That's attachment 5, their design in the report. But community services staff believe that the proposed parking will suffice with proper programming of the facility. And what I'm saying is that, you know, we wouldn't have a hockey tournament scheduled at the same time as a significant gymnasium event. Sidewalk. Operations staff are also working on design and approvals to connect sidewalk from the residential lands to the east. So that's the Hydro 1 corridor along Powerline Road. And I think we have approval in principle on that with operations staff work. Solar panels. So the $28.3 million includes a solar panel ready billing, but it doesn't include the solar panels. BME estimates that the solar panel system, which is not included in this budget, would be another $600,000 to $700,000, and we'd be, you know, seeking out grant opportunities for that phase if it happens. So I think in summary, staff feel that Design Option 3, the preferred option, meets the community needs. It addresses functionality, sustainability, cost efficiency, all for the building well. Constructing this expansion, though, will be a significant step in meeting the growing needs for recreation, social, and sport activities in the County of Brant, but we expect that with long-term growth, further opportunities and partnerships will need to be explored to meet future needs. For example, school partnerships or smaller versions of this model in other communities. So I guess what are we asking from Council today? First off, that staff be directed to proceed with Option 3 preferred design as described in the report, and that staff be directed to pursue all funding opportunities and commence community fundraising. And just of note, we've already submitted for the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund. There's a potential $10 million funding opportunity there. And that staff be directed to work with MJMA Architects to complete detailed design so that we can actually have a shovel-ready project. and that staff bring the final design and cost estimates, complete with grant application results, a fundraising update to council for final approval prior to tendering for construction. So if you have any questions at this point, I can answer them, and if not, I'll ask Mark and Monica to come to the podium to run through their presentation, and then I'll be available as well as them and the rest of the staff team for any specifics. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was going to do questions after, but there's a few here now. We'll go quickly. Councillor McAlpine, then Councillor Howes to Phil.
I'm just wondering, you talked about the schools just briefly. With the 2 new schools being proposed to be built in the near term this spring, does that change the needs requests? Or I would think there might be an opportunity to partner with them to expand maybe the school gymnasiums to utilize, say, our use for seniors, stuff like that.
So I would say that in response to that, those are all things we'll be looking at. But right now, if we were to build the expansion as proposed, like we'll program it day and night. Like it'll be fully programmed out. So we will be still doing our after-school programs at the schools. We'll still be potentially looking for expansion at some point. And that's why I was saying this is really like a stage 1. What it does is it gives us some security in that, if churches were to sell their facilities, we would have to program less. Right now, we're trying to bring it in-house and then continue to look at these opportunities moving forward. So it's a really good question, though.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Howes?
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. Right at the end of your presentation, or your discussion, we were talking about the timing of grant application results related to when we pull the trigger on final decisions to green light to go to tender. Can you talk just a little bit more about the amount of grant application that you anticipate, and of those, if we're going after 5 grants, will results from all of those 5 grants, one way or the other, likely be in before we need to make a final decision?
So through the chair, the idea is that we wouldn't come forward until we do have a significant grant in place and well along in our fundraising with the community. So we're short $5.5 million just on the basic project, and that doesn't include the community fundraising of another $1.1 million. And then if we're going to do the solar package, we'd probably be looking for another grant for that. So, we're looking for $6 or $7 million at a minimum. I'm hopeful that the grant we just applied for, that we could hit the 10 million. That would really help us a lot. It would help us on our decisions for some of the material selections and that sort of thing too. So the idea is for us to get this project shovel ready. The problem with some of the grants, like the one we just applied to, they're looking for a spring of 2027 opening, and the best I can hit is like the year end of 27, or like an occupancy of January 1, 2028. So that particular grant, we spoke with the province, and they suggested that we still submit, but we don't 100% meet their requirements. And so I'd want to make sure that we're far enough along that we do hit any new requirements of new grants if we're not successful on this one. That's sort of the idea.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Phil. Phil, any of these options, 1, 2, or 3, at a higher level, that's it for this site, correct? We couldn't add another thing, because for years, and before you even came here, for years, we talked about adding an indoor pool to the Brand Sports Complex. So going forward with this, the pool's off the table, and the site's filled?
So through the chair, I could never say never, because you can always engineer something. But practically speaking, this would build out the site. There's the additional 60 parking spaces that that we might do in the future. You could put a small facility there and a small number of parking spaces if it was a small library or something like that. I don't see a pool fitting into the site, but we do have, our other facility just down the road, our new site, which potentially could house the indoor soccer complex. It could house an administration building combined with a pool. So I think we have other options out there that are close by and well fit within the community. But I would say for this site, we're building it out. And honestly, when we looked at the original design and how it worked with the site, it was very tight. And I think the design we're proposing now, although my staff would say they would rather have, the increased number of pickleball courts because they can program it. When you get into the site's tiered and trying to get into accessibility and drop-offs and all of those different things, you need landscape space to be able to achieve that stuff without spending a huge ton of money. So I think the design we have really suits the site now. And I would say, we're at full build out with the exception of those additional parking spaces that I would say we would, wait a few years and see how well the site's functioning, and assuming that we're correct, we just don't build it and it stays green space. But if we needed it, it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have MJMA come up and give a little presentation. Welcome. And if I could just get you to just give your names for the clerk, that would be great.
Okay, morning everyone. Thanks for having us. This is Monica Lung, MJMA. I'm Mark Downing. We're representatives of the architectural firm that, thank you very much, got the commission to do this project. Thanks, Phil, for that introduction. We'll walk you through the story of the design as it's developed to date. Our commitment and engagement to work with city staff and stakeholder groups to get us to where we are, and hopefully to describe to you the recommended option in enough detail that you've got enough information to make a decision. So we'll talk to you today about the original concept design, consultation process, and how we worked through adjustments to the designs that we had costed. Talk to you about how we arrived at a preferred design and some of the features of that design so you're informed on what we've included. So conceptually, at the time we were awarded this project, basically our understanding was that we were looking to add some recreation amenities to the east side of the existing Brant Sports Complex. We understood that the site is already fairly densely built out, so we would be occupying some space that is currently parking. That we were looking at reconfiguring the pedestrian and vehicular access to the current building to accommodate this new one. And that the program inside this building would either amplify some of the program that's in the existing project or add some new program. So what we were looking at was adding a triple gym, walking track, multi-purpose rooms, some additional arena dressing rooms to make the original building a little more accommodating, some staff offices, and a new entry sequence into the new project. Parking was part of this proposal as well on the site to the south. In the RFP, based on 2019 costing data, the budget for this project sat at $22.3 million, or roughly $350 a square foot to do the building program that you felt that you needed for this. So, good news and bad news. The not so good news is that construction market, as I'm sure all of you are aware, became quite volatile over the pandemic and has somewhat settled down, but because our orange friend to the south has become more volatile again. So $700 a square foot, we felt from our experience working through construction projects is a reasonable target just for developing a design. The good news is that your core team of staff who are working on this are experienced with recreation programming and could see ways that the program of this project might have some flexibility. So we think we can work with those numbers. So in consultation with staff, we came up with two options for proceeding with this project. The one you see on the left is the full build. So this is all of the program, all of the recreation amenity that we saw reflected in the RFP. The option to the right is a scaled back version. And the idea here is we would go to a cost consultant with both of these options. If we found that the one on the left, the full build out, was more than the budget could handle, we would have a secondary option, still scaled back, but that meets the community needs at a lower budget point. The difference between the two schemes was the gym amenity. Amenities like dressing rooms, we really can't scale them up and down to the point where they'd make a difference in the budget, but the gym we could. So in the 51,000 square foot version, we had a much more fulsome design. We had more pickleball courts, larger basketball amenity, generally speaking, just more GFA. And so the second option scales back, but still could be workable. Worth noting, too, that the dressing rooms that we're proposing to add, and these are associated to the arena now, not necessarily to the gym, but we can talk maybe in a little more detail later about how that works. But generally speaking, one of the goals of this project is to make this facility fully accessible. That means barrier-free. And the dressing rooms that you have in your current facility, it would be a stretch to say that they're barrier-free, and a stretch also to say that, you know, they're generous enough to accommodate full use. So the dressing rooms we're proposing in both the design options are scaled up to meet those requirements. Each of them barrier-free. Each of them has a private dressing stall for any person who might feel the need to change privately. And so generally speaking, the idea is the facility becomes fully inclusive, fully accessible, regardless of budget. So we took those two options to a cost consultant and found that the 51,000 square foot option came in at around 38. The 38,000 square foot option came in at around 32. So what that meant for us is we got to look at some efficiencies. We went back to the drawing board. We worked with staff to see what efficiencies we could find. And what we ended up doing was, first thing, called in some more estimators to help us with deciding on what options we might explore to bring the cost down. Second thing we did, after hearing what they had to say, was to move the building program into a smaller building footprint. That meant taking program that was on the ground floor and moving it up to the upper floor. We believe we found some efficiencies that way, and that we could proceed with this preferred option.
And through all of this design process, we landed on a program that was quite similar to what was scaled back in option 2. So as you can see, the huge part of the heart of the program would be taken by the gym, which would now accommodate 1.5 basketball courts, 3 volleyball courts, and 5 pickleball courts. And above that, we would have a 130-meter track, which would have 3 lanes, walk, run, and pass. And then the remaining program that fleshes out the building would be in support of those programs, such as the change rooms, of which we would have 5, and multi-purpose rooms, of which we would have 3, including staff. And then the remaining would be service, circulation, and washroom. So that brings us to total GFA gross floor area of around 38,000 square feet, or about 3,500 square meters. So as we were working on the building, we also took a step back and tried to understand how this expansion could contribute back to the community, how it would integrate with an existing infrastructure, and also the future development that's being planned to the south of this site. So we looked at improving vehicular as well as pedestrian connections. So in the purple arrows, I'm not sure if this works. To the north, we have existing vehicular connections to Powerline Road, which we're maintaining. And then through the development of this new south parking lot, we're going to be creating a new connection down south to Hutchings Road. In terms of pedestrian connections, as Phil spoke to earlier, there are a couple of future sidewalks planned, north connecting to the Powerline Road, as well as on the south towards Hutchings. So our pedestrian crosswalks that we've planned, these future crosswalks are connections at the north here, from the expansion north to Powerline Road, to the south here, to the south parking lot, and along the parking lot down to the sidewalk here. And then lastly, some pedestrian crosswalks to reinforce connections to the east parking lot that is existing and reconfigured. In terms of parking, we'll have a total of 397 standard parking stalls, 387 of which would be standard, and that would be split between the west parking lot that's existing, the east parking lot, which is also existing and reconfigured here in the middle, and some new parking to the south. 10 of which will be accessible, and that will be divided between some in the west parking lot, as well as some here in white in the east parking lot. I don't know why this keeps moving. In addition, there will be 4 EV charging stations planned here, and bike parking will also be provided. So there are some that are existing to the northwest of the site, and we will be providing some as well, adjacent to the main entrances. As Phil spoke to earlier, there also is a potential for expansion to the west for additional parking of about 60 parking spots. In terms of accessibility, there will be drop-off areas, as you can see by the purple dots, existing on the west side of the building, as well as a new one here on the east side of the building. And at every one of the pedestrian crosswalks, they will all be raised for increased visibility. Rest areas will be provided throughout the site for those walking from the parking to the building. And accessible ramps will be provided to mitigate the grade changes throughout the site. So as we come towards the building itself, the main entrance will be at the south for this new expansion that we've planned. And at the north will be where it's familiar, but a renewed entrance that would connect into the arena itself. Zooming into the building, as we get closer and into the building itself, just pointing out here again, this north entrance would allow a direct access into the existing arenas. But what we're imagining for the expansion is that most would be entering through the south, through this main entrance plaza. You would come in through the vestibule into the lobby space, and the lobby space will be quite clear. Moving north, you go into the gym, and to the right, you have views back outside. And in the green here at the front, when you first come in, will be the reception, as well as some staff offices. To the right of that is the public washrooms, and to the left is multipurpose. And then as you move forward, you'll come across the elevator and the stairs, which are right across from each other. So from a wayfinding point of view, it'll be very clear. And as you move into the gym itself, this is the largest room in the expansion. We'll get into some detail there. But right to the south of that is an open change room, change area that has great visibility into the gym as well as to the lobby. If you're not going into the gym, you can turn left and walk down this west corridor. That provides a connection into the existing arena. There's also a connection from the gym as well. And flanking the gym are 4 change rooms, mainly to serve the arena itself, with the south change room being a flex change room for various configurations. So as you go up the elevator and the stairs, you would arrive here at the elevator, and here at the stairs, you arrive at the apron around the walking track or the running track, which you see here in orange. It's 130 meters. And the way we've designed this is we've grouped all the remaining programming to the west side of the track, which gives it nice views to the track, but also opens up possibilities for views into the arena, which we think is quite interesting. So we've got in yellow the multi-purpose rooms, one at the south and one in the middle for senior and youth. And then we've grouped staff offices to the north in green here. So private offices, open offices, staff kitchen and washroom. The remaining spaces are mainly storage in brown and service. And one key feature we worked to create was a connection and a link to the existing building on the second level, which from an operational point of view would be a huge asset. So just diving into the gym a little bit further, as Mark was talking about earlier, this really drives the size of the gym. So you can see here how we're accommodating 1.5 basketball courts shown here in orange, 3 volleyball courts in red, and 5 pickleball courts in green. So this really sets the sides for this large room. To the top here in this drawing, you'll see some area we've allowed for spectator seating. And off of that are the 4 change rooms we spoke about. And then on to here to the left is the open gym change area. So here are some views of what the proposed expansion might look like from the outside. So this is a bird's eye view from Powerline Road, the main road. You see here the existing Brant Sports Complex to the right, the proposed expansion to the left, and this would be the new north entrance to the arena. You see the existing east parking here to the left, and then proposed new parking to the south, and the future development beyond. Here's another main elevation view, what you would see from Powerline Road. Again, here is the existing Brant Sports Complex, the proposed expansion to the left, and the new north entrance to the arena. So, you know, you can tell here that our design intention is really to maintain a similar scale, similar height and mass, so that the expansion works well together with what's already there. Here's another view, bringing us to a closer look at the north entrance. So again, existing Brant Sports Complex here, proposed expansion to the east, and new north entrance. And you'll see we would like to provide good visibility and transparency into the activity of the new gym, as well as open and inviting transparent entrance at the north. As we swing around, this is the south entrance, the main entrance. We've planned a beautiful landscape plaza and sort of warm and inviting entrance to this building. We'd really like to provide transparency so that you can view into the lobby itself. And we really see the upper volume being something that can be light and glowing and as a beacon for a landmark within the County of Brant. So again, the existing Brant Sports Complex to the left, and the expansion here with the entrance to the south here.
So we really can't talk about doing any architectural project anymore without talking about sustainability. Sustainability, which has to do, of course, with operational costs and health, but also, depending on your perspective, our approach to our contribution to staving off the climate crisis. Fortunately, in our firm, we approach these kinds of issues pragmatically. We don't think it's necessarily a very significant effort to do construction projects that are sustainable. We'll talk a little bit with you today about how we hope that might happen for this project. So one aspect of sustainability is how to operate a building of this scale to make it a pleasant and healthy space without running building systems all the time. So item number one here is maximize natural daylighting. We've been fortunate in our firm to work with clients who really appreciate that whether or not you're in a climate crisis, a naturally lit space is a pleasant and healthy space in which to spend your time. Kind of like we've got skylights in this council chamber, so that's a good sign. So we're hoping that some natural lighting in the gym might be a very nice amenity. For decades in our firm, we've been working on ways to maximize thermal and air tightness in our building envelopes. And part of that is the way we detail building envelopes. A minimum number of structural penetrations, lots of insulation, and an increased emphasis on air tightness. Less air leakage means building systems don't work as hard, means you spend less money on energy, means you consume less energy. For this project, we are proposing all electric building systems, and I'd have to say that I haven't worked on a project that proposes gas-fired systems in 6 or 7 years. It is a very standard thing to do now. We don't think it's a major effort, but we want to keep you informed. This is a building that will have high efficiency electric hot water heaters and probably air source heat pumps to run heating and cooling. A big aspect of what we've been doing, and I would say with a lot of support from city staff and from Brant Municipal Enterprises, is to prepare this building for a photovoltaic array. What that means is we design the roof structure to accept future photovoltaic solar panels. We design the electrical room to have space for any equipment that has to come in. Usually there's an inverter that has to go in. And we design empty conduits from the roof down to the electrical room so that when the decision's made to go to photovoltaics, this building is ready to accept them. We would love to get those panels onto the building at the time of construction, but we also know that budget is a factor, so we want to be prepared. And the last thing we want to describe to you is that part of our participation in trying our best to handle our part of the climate emergency is to use materials and assemblies that are low in embodied carbon. The goal of having an all-electric building is to reduce carbon emissions, while the same logic applies to upfront construction methods. So we will be specifying systems and materials that are produced as close to home as possible, that are assembled without emissions as much as possible, that don't require cross-country voyages to get to this site. It's a best practice scenario. We are not meeting any specific targets, but our goal is to reduce all emissions all the time from the beginning of the project to the end of its life.
Another topic that is important to our office, as well as for this project, is accessibility and inclusivity. And when we look at those topics, that's something that we like to address at several scales, right from when you arrive to the site all the way down to the building. So in terms of site upgrades that will address this issue, it depends on how you come to the site. So if you're walking, we will be providing raised crosswalks at each one of these pedestrian crosswalks to improve visibility. So that's all the blue dots. Rest areas, which we've touched on, and accessible ramps, which we've touched on earlier. And importantly, along those routes, providing landscaping so that there's shade and comfort as you're moving towards the building. If you're driving towards the site, then, as we've touched on before, there are drop-off areas existing to the west and a new one to the east. accessible parking that will be provided on the west and the east parking spots. EV charging stations will also be provided, and bike parking, all of which we've touched on before. And as you come to the site and to the building, knowing where to go is really important. We have an environmental graphics design team within our office who we work with to ensure that all the building signage and site signage is AODA compliant and accessible. Within the building itself, we will be providing an elevator to allow for accessible approaches to both levels of the building. Within the gym itself will be an open, inclusive change area to the south here. And each one of these change rooms on the left of the gym will incorporate private change stalls. So we'll talk a little bit about as well. The public washrooms themselves all have private stalls, which will help reflect sort of the changing demographics and inclusivity within the community, as well as being family-friendly. The whole facility will be designed to accessible standards and best practices with barrier-free spaces allowed for. And a universal public washroom will also be provided with adult change tables. So that's all will be planned. So getting into the change rooms themselves, they will be large and generous. So they will be around 850 square feet or 79 square meters. The fixtures that they will include are one barrier-free toilet stall here, 2 showers, including one barrier-free shower itself, and a private change and shower stall, which has access both from the exterior as well as the interior of the team room. So this gives a lot of flexibility for how teams may be made up and how it might want to be used. Within the team area itself, we've test fitted it here, and it will fit 22 players based off of bench areas that match the existing arena change rooms. And we will be providing, as a standard for each one of these change rooms, a barrier-free bench area as well. So the team area is quite generous, and we can see lots of flexibility and use for both regular and tournament play. In addition to that, we will be providing upgrades to the existing change rooms, and what that means is providing connections between 2 pairs of change rooms that you see here. That will involve adding overhead doors and removable benches so that there's greater flexibility in how those pairs of change rooms can be used.
Okay, and of course, depending on the outcome of today, we can give you a little bit of a snapshot into what we think would need to happen next. Presuming we are motivated and excited to get going on this project, we would want to be in the ground next spring. So pink line is where we are in the schedule, so late middle of May. Of note in this chart, I would say, is that green bar is the amount of time we think the CS-RIF organization might need to look at our submission package. Now, having worked on lots of grant packages from the architectural side before, I would say that this project is in really good shape in the sense that we've vetted a bunch of schemes. We have a scheme that we think works, and that is lots of amenities and efficient for the budget that we think we need to come up with. We think it's going to take a number of months, like up to November, for CS-RIF to review this. So that's the dollar sign at the end there, is we are hoping that that grant comes through. Concurrently with, while the granting bodies are looking at our applications, however many more there might be, this team would need to go into design development and construction documents so that the project is essentially ready to do, I would call it a Class A costing, meaning within 5%, sometime around November. We want to do it in November because we want to present it to you. We want to have some time to react to whatever we see in the cost report. If there's something in there we don't like, we want to have some time to adjust the design. All of this in service of tendering in January. Results come back, they get reviewed, award process begins so that a contractor can be in the ground in early spring. That's the basis for how this schedule is put together. So like I say, the key dates in there are the grant application and the cost report. Pending review by this group, our team is prepared to go into design development immediately and meet these dates. So with that in mind, we hope that we're going to open this up to questions, but we hope that you've gotten a good kind of overview of the process we've been through to date with your team and with the consultations we've gone through with staff. And we're here to answer any questions you might have. So thanks very much for having us.
Okay, so a lot of great information there. Committee questions, Councillor Howes and Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the design team. Thanks for walking us through all of that. It's a lot, and great to hear it right from the people who were involved. You're probably aware that change room design is a hot topic within this community when it relates to our sports facilities. And so my question is in that direction. I wanted to make sure that I'm understanding the design accurately, because people will ask any of us about this. The four, and I'm using your words, large and generous, the 4 large and generous change rooms that will appear within this new construction are to serve the users of the ice facilities. And they look great. I'm curious about what happens to the old change rooms, or the current change rooms in the ice facility. And then more specifically, I'm looking at the open change rooms to serve the gymnasium. And I just wanted clarification. They're basically for people to change shoes from being outside the facility to going into the gym. Nobody's having a shower after playing basketball. Can you just walk us through that a little bit?
Yes. Okay. So those are all good questions. So the first question is, what happens to the existing dressing rooms in the Brant Sports Complex? So they maintain their role as being dressing rooms. The need, Phil might be able to talk a little bit about the RFP process and what there must have been plenty of discussions on the need for new dressing rooms. So the intent here is to augment what you've already got, and to do it in a way that addresses some of the concerns about the existing ones. So what we were hearing is the existing dressing rooms are not super accessible, too small, et cetera. So that was the thinking here, is we set aside enough square footage to do much larger dressing rooms. The existing ones are under 500 square feet. These are 850. So we think we've got kind of the general gross floor area of the new dressing rooms under control. And that's why we call them generous, is they're just much larger. About the gym, so that's an interesting question. We talked a lot with city staff about how gym users might want to use a dressing room. And what came out of it was what you've correctly stated. It's a place where let's say it's winter. It's a place where you drop your sloppy boots and your winter coat in a cubby, change into your court shoes, enjoy your time in the gym, come back. It's fully visible, it's family friendly, it's not about closing it down and having shower spaces. From what we're hearing, not just here, but in lots of communities, generally gym users don't, as a demographic, shower in the facility. They put their coats on and go home. So really the difference between a gym change room and, say a hockey dressing room is it's much lighter use, it's much less formal, it's all gender, all family, all together. It's visible, there's lots of circulation through it, and people use it for a couple of minutes at a time. That's the way we would want to design that room.
Thank you for those details.
Councillor Oakley?
Yeah, through the chair to the presenters, just 2 questions here. I'll start with my first one. So I notice, with our option 2 here, we have 1.5 basketball courts and no full-size basketball courts. I'm curious as to your thoughts on how much use this half basketball court would get, and whether or not, if there's not a ton of usage imagined for that, whether it be more efficient to simply have one full-size FIBA basketball court as opposed to 1.5 of the smaller courts? Would be my first.
Yeah, if you don't mind. It's a reasonable question. That is a programming question. So what we're trying to do is meet the needs of a kind of growing community. So the 1.5 rather than a FIBA, the difference in the length is 6 feet between, say, a basketball, say a kind of high school sized basketball court and a FIBA one. So if we tried to do only one FIBA versus a full 85-foot plus a half court, my gut reaction is that you get better use out of 1.5 than you would out of just a single. But we did show some designs that placed a FIBA court in the center of this space, you know, centralized along where the spectators might be sitting, et cetera. Certainly possible. It's just a question about what's the best use of a limited amount of square footage. And so certainly in a space of this size, we're kind of talking about game lines right now, and I think options are still open. But to answer your question, I would say that we're trying to maximize every square foot. So if you can get 3 half courts rather than 2, you should do 3.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question through the chair would be in regards to, you mentioned preparing the roof for solar array. I'm curious, and I think Phil may have mentioned in his initial intro, the approximate costings of a solar array right off the cuff. I'm curious if we have that estimated costing versus the operational cost savings of having on-site energy generation, just for context of whether or not to move forward right off the cuff with the solar generation.
Sure, I'll start, and then if you have anything to add. Okay, so preparing the building for solar photovoltaics is, you know, I got to say, a fairly minor effort. You know, it's a couple of pounds per square foot of structural load. Lots of buildings get solar arrays without actually any preparation. So that's a minor part of it. The cost of the array is something that we are going to work on with Brant Municipal Enterprises and with our cost consultant the next time we do this exercise. It came in at around $900,000. My experience on doing projects like this suggests that that's more than adequate, but we'll find out when we actually do a cost exercise. Now, as far as life cycle costing and the savings, we do have Brant Municipal Enterprises, BME, is an energy modeler, and they are going to work with us to get good data on that. We would do that work once we've decided to proceed with it. But of course, if you can bring this facility to net zero energy, it would be well worth the savings. I can't give you the numbers now, but that's what I believe would happen.
So through the chair, it's a pretty dynamic project. So BME actually brought in a high-level analysis because they don't have enough information yet, right, until we get further along in detailed design. And they come up with another option that was between $600,000 and $700,000 for the array. And whether we'd hit net zero, I'm not sure yet, but that's what we want to work towards. The other piece of it is that the charging stations wouldn't be part of our 28.3 million. That would be, again, something we'd want to hopefully get a grant for, but the actual services to those locations or the conduit will be in place, similar to the rooftop. I don't think I mentioned that earlier.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to our presenters. To what extent do we meet the functional need with the proposed option 3?
Through the chair, so that's a really good question. And as I mentioned in the preamble, that I think we'll hit the needs of today, and we've actually looked at, and in the package, I can't remember which attachment it is, but there's a detail of this sorts of things that we anticipate programming. We can program it with our residents now and fill the place. So it is going to meet the needs of today, not the needs of say 5 to 10 years. It'll meet 0 to 5, I think, and we'll have to continue to look at other options. And that's part of what we work through. And I think our mindset was that, okay, we need a starting point to have our own recreational facility, and that really achieving everything on this site at this point is not financially feasible, but it secures space for our programs, secures our programs, so that we don't, say, start up programs and then have to tell the community, well, where we're renting space here, we no longer have it and have to pull back. So I think it's a good starting point. Councillor McAlpine brought up about the gyms. So right now we've got really good participation with the public board, not so much with the Catholic board, but we're working on new agreements with both. But again, having a baseline, I think, and we'll have to be creative in our programming to make sure that we're meeting the various needs of the community. There's a lot to do there, and we'll be working on that programming plan in further detail, of course, over the next year and a half.
A difficult question for you, Phil, if that's okay, Mr. Chair. Do you think we meet the needs of this sporting community, so volleyball, basketball, pickleball, God knows what else, relative to the way in which we meet the needs of the ice hockey community?
Through the chair, I think, that the biggest thing here is that we're hitting all these other needs where we weren't before, or where we're not now. And at the same time, though, like when we talked about dressing rooms, for example, you're looking for a description. Well, those new rooms are designed for 22 guys my size, so big boys, and a big team with a couple big goalies. And the second piece of that was that the needs were much different in '09 when you were designing the Brant Sports Complex, and there's a huge number of different options going on with sporting, combining genders and that sort of thing. That those existing spaces will be fully utilized still, believe it or not. We'll just be much more efficient in how we do it, and that's why on the west pad we've talked about punching in some openings between dressing rooms to create some double rooms. I've done that in 2 of my arenas in a previous municipality, and it really functions well. So a lot of what we're doing here in this design is making sure it's flexible but meeting the needs. Hopefully that helps.
One more, if I may?
Yep, go ahead.
Yep. Did you consider at all the possibility of putting this facility in Potroff Road with the proposed indoor turf facility to get an economy of scale?
So, through the chair, I think, that's a potential option, but Potroff Road is a ways away as far as servicing and those sorts of things. So I think it would be an option. It could be that, the Potroff site, I think, has lots of opportunities, right? And I mentioned it earlier. In my mind, I see potential administration building, potential library, potential pool, potential other spaces. So, I mean, it might be phase 2 in Paris for our social and rec services facilities. But I think the BSC, the site's ready to go. I think we can be in the ground in the spring if we can get the right funding for the project.
Okay, just one final comment. We had a long conversation about whether we could afford a new library up at the Borkett Centre. And we never actually got to the question of could we afford it, because something else tripped it up beforehand. But had we got there, I'd be asking the same question about affordability. But are we going to talk about that later in the agenda, or do we do it now, Mr. Chair?
Go for it.
Well, I just know there's an agenda item where we're going to consider this, but I think it would only be, I think, to hold my own personal integrity, I have to ask the question, can we afford this? Because this is almost as much as the cost of that library proposal. And I would like to have a sense that from our staff as to whether we think this is indeed affordable, because it's actually prompting a conversation we need to have about how much debt we as a community, we as a county, are prepared to accept, because I think, Phil, you said we actually flip over the self-imposed debt limit in 2027 if we go ahead with this proposal. So I think it's something we have to consider before we can even start to think about whether this particular project is where we'd actually put the money.
So through the chair, and I'll let Heather jump in afterwards, but finance spent quite a lot of time looking at the long-term financial plan and how this would fit into it. And so, we can't recommend a green light to this project without picking up the $5.5 million in grant funding, plus getting the fundraising in place, and any of those other pieces being funded some other way. If we can achieve those fundraising and grants, then it's still in keeping with our long-term financial plan and what's ahead of us. So I'll let Heather expand upon that, but I think that was a big part of the process. We spent quite a bit of time on that.
Heather?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Most of these questions here are for the report of 8.4. We're here to hear from the architects. And I'd like to move the meeting on because we do have another delegation after this.
Okay.
And I think it's only fair that these questions come for the report of 8.4. Thank you.
All right, fair statement, Councilor Brown. So anybody else with questions as far as the architects are concerned? Seeing none? Okay, thank you very much. And how would committee like to go forward with this? Councilor Oakley?
Move to receive and refer to 8.4.
Second, Mayor Bailey. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, moving on to 4.3, our next delegation, Phil Harris for the Mount Pleasant Park Multi-Sports Pad. Come on right up, yep.
Sorry, new to this.
If we could just get you to state your names for the clerk, and you have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Hi, I'm Phil Harris. And Jay Robinson. We're here requesting a multi-sports pad at the Mount Pleasant Park. Both of us born and reside in Mount Pleasant. We're both members of the Mount Pleasant Optimists, which means we're well aware of the community needs. And we also both volunteer as seasonal ice makers. I was gonna come up with a fancier term, but that's what it is. So currently at the Mount Pleasant Park, so that's the one along Birch Road, just off the main intersection there by the windmill, we do a ice rink in the winter. I cropped the image, this is from Google Maps. I just cropped the image, so that's actually the boards that we put up in the wintertime. And you can hardly see it, but to the right, we do a little skating section for people that don't want to play hockey. Our current challenges are assembling, disassembling, and storage of the boards. They're 4x8 boards, stack them up. They're not easy to move around. And the biggest challenge is the surface is uneven and porous. We're making ice on a ball diamond, so you can imagine the challenge there. Especially with the winters we have anymore, you get a few days of sun, and that's pretty much our ice is gone, and we got to start all over. And it usually takes about 10 days to get decent ice to skate on. There's no on-site storage for equipment, but that might be somewhat fixed. There was a shed that was installed, and we might be able to use that for in the wintertime. And as stated before, Mother Nature is our biggest enemy right now. So, why a multi-sports pad? I just Googled the top youth sports in Canada, and in this order, they are soccer, swimming, hockey, and basketball. Right now at that facility, we have one, and it's a soccer field that nobody uses. Also, this sports pad, we were thinking that if it could retain the water, so then we do get warm weather, then the water's still there and it'll just refreeze and we'll be good to go. So, as I said, the challenges we've had over the years, and we've been doing the rink for probably what? Over 10 years. So we've had many discussions. And then this idea came up that there's a similar, or what we're thinking would actually work, and it's actually the jail Scott McLean recreation pad in Tilsonburg. So these renderings are of that facility. I did not make these, can't take credit. So it actually has basketball nets, and then in the summertime, you can play ball hockey or roller hockey or whatever else you want to do on the hard surface. And then in the wintertime, you can flood it and for figure skating or hockey or whatever else. Or maybe winter basketball. There you go. This is actually the facility. It's right behind the community center in Tilsonburg. Now, luckily for them, they're utilizing cooling from the existing rink in Tilsonburg. So I guess they've got pipes underneath. So making ice in the wintertime is a lot easier for them, I imagine. Here's another picture of it. Here's some pictures I took. I just stopped there in the wintertime. Don't judge the quality of them. I was trying not to include the people that were there, and I didn't want to wait around until they left. But as you can see, the basketball nets, and you can see the nets behind to catch pucks, balls, whatever you have it. There's also some small changing rooms to get out of the weather. And those boards and everything just stay in place all year round. So that brings us to the Mount Pleasant Park. And like I said, we've pitched the idea around. We've talked to Councillor Coleman and some other members. And here's kind of our current challenges with the Mount Pleasant Park. Number one is the train station. So we've heard that the train station has been given a kind of a approval or soft approval that it can be slated at the Mount Pleasant Park. And apparently the location that they've picked is right where number 4 is, which is our alternate site that we think the multi-sports pad would make sense. We've also put on some other possible locations to the train station that we think is a good idea. It's not that we're trying to get rid of the train station, we're just trying to keep the park for park purposes. And we just have some questions on how that train station would fit there. But anyway, it is slated, like I said, for 4, and we worry about that there's could be some baseballs, there could be some, other things that go there. And, sorry, I'm pointing at the screen, you guys can't see me. Oh, the cursor, yeah. Oh, here we go, okay, here we are. So they have proposed that the sports pad could maybe go in the soccer field. That's where the soccer field is right now, is right here. Why this soccer field doesn't get used is a lot of people doesn't know it exists. It's rough, and apparently there's lack of washrooms and stuff for people to use. My kids didn't play soccer, so I'm not really up on that, but I talked to some other people that have played and coached soccer, and that was their feedback. There's apparently going to be some maybe new land that could come from the developer, but there's a row of really old trees here that I doubt that are going to come down because they thought about maybe relocating the soccer field back there. Anyway, this is a long story. Yeah, it's what's existing right now. So there's small ball diamonds here and a small ball diamond there. You can't really see it on the picture. But the main things that get used at the park the most is actually these tennis courts, which also have pickleball now, and the skate park. This pavilion and playground get used, but typically everything else isn't being used at the moment. The proposed places to expand on the train station a bit more, in between the tracks, this is apparently a federal lease land, or provincial, I don't know. But it makes sense to go there. There's nothing there at the moment. And also, the idea got floated around that this lot here is actually for sale. It's an old junkyard. We don't think anybody should build a house there, but that's my opinion. It could be a parking lot and maybe the train station could go there. That would be right along the paved trail. Or even you could put the train station right here at the front, but that's actually flow or overflow parking that's used for baseball, so it's probably not ideal. Number 2 is some proposed washrooms that Kathy Valentine was saying, and that's kind of why we think this multi-sports pad would make more sense here, because it's right central to the parking, central to the other facilities that are there. There's also existing light poles that are here that could be utilized along this side and right here. Water is right there, hydro is right there. Having it back here would just add additional costs. Any questions?
Okay,
And maybe we have some answers.
thank you. Committee, questions? Counselor Chambers and Counselor Oakley.
Just so I might, if I might, through you, Mr. Chairman, specific questions and then maybe a philosophical question.
Sure.
So the first question is, what do you see happening in terms of operating this facility? What do you see in terms of maintenance? And additionally, what do you see in terms of security?
Okay, well, we're not really experts in that, but I can give just our general feedback. I don't think it'll take a lot for maintenance. I mean, the boards stay existing, the basketball net stays, like everything stays there. The only thing that would maybe change seasonally from summertime to wintertime would, I don't know how the drainage would work, but we'd have to somehow block that off to flood it. As far as security, I mean, I think it makes more sense to be here rather than if it's over here, these are houses, and it's kind of behind everything. So I think you would probably get more riffraff hanging out there because it can't be seen by the road, you know, if there's passing police officers or whatever. So that kind of answer your questions?
Just to follow up to that question, in terms of operational, do you see a county staff operating this facility, maintaining, cleaning ice, that kind of stuff, or is that an optimum?
I wouldn't think it would be necessary. I mean, as far as cleaning the ice, the volunteers do that, as far as snow removal. In the summertime, I mean, you're gonna get some leaves and other debris that you could blow off with a blower if maybe some staff are on their way through. I think they do some kind of general maintenance right now. So I don't think that'll be a huge requirement, but hey, I don't know.
And now the philosophical question, if I might, and I'm still trying to wrestle with this in my own mind. Recognizing that the county's facility or resources are limited, do you think it is wiser to invest in a central location and bring people to the central location, or do you feel it is more better to invest in the smaller locations throughout the community in terms of providing recreational facilities?
Well, I can give you the selfish answer, and I think it's better for the community if it's local. I can give the political answer, and you guys talk about like energy efficiency and sustainability and all that. Promoting travel, I don't think is a good idea. If everything's local, people can walk, it's access to the trails there, so people bike there right now for baseball. And there's a sidewalk that goes there from the village. So I think having multiple smaller locations like this would serve the community needs far more than having one massive spot. We do get feedback in the winter time that there's people coming from all over the county to use that ice.
Thank you. I think that was a good answer.
So, yeah, Counselor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff actually on this. So 2 quick questions. If I'm understanding the request correctly, do we have a similar facility at J. Wells Park currently?
Where's that?
Kathy?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We do have a similar facility that's much smaller in scale than the one that's being proposed here, and it does not include ice hockey at that one. The board system there is not designed for that specifically. This system is more like an indoor recreational facility setup, is what they've shown today.
Okay, and then the second follow-up question would be acknowledging that, and obviously I'm not going to hold you to these guesstimates, but would you have a guesstimate? Is this like a low six figures project, high six figures project, a seven-figure project, just roughly?
Do you guys cost any of it? Get information?
Yeah, I reached out to the place in Tilsonburg. I left a message, the person wasn't available, but our guesstimate is low six figures. They're also, the feedback we've gotten so far from the community, and we haven't spread this out too much because we kind of wanted to see if it was moving forward first, is there would be some fundraising and community support.
Mr. Chair, could I speak to that?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. Also, to consider is the scale and the size of this facility. So if you're looking at a full 85-foot by 200-foot size, which is similar to what has been shown, you would be in the upper six figures.
Allison?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just pulled up the Tilsonburg report on the Jail Scott McLean outdoor rec pad that's referenced. In 2018, phase one of that project was $663,000. So just for reference, I don't know all the details of it, but that should give you a order of magnitude.
You're good, Councillor Oakley? Councillor Howes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A comment and a question, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks for bringing this forward. I've seen this type of facility done in other municipalities, and it's big in Europe. There are a lot of, and sometimes they're kind of enclosed with fencing, and I think it's a great way of doubling the use of your real estate. So I think this is a good idea. I think it's also, you've politely nudged us about the train station, and I think it's a reminder to us that perhaps we, as a municipality, need to get an update on what we've heard from people related to the train station in past years, but we haven't heard anything lately. So I think that's a polite nudge from you guys that maybe we could relook at that and find out where it's really at currently. I wanted to ask what's obviously a couple of racket courts there. Is that tennis, not pickleball, or it is both? Okay, all right, I wondered about that. Okay, great, well, thanks. Good luck with this project.
I was just gonna make a comment that skating park that was right here, it was a tennis court, but I don't know, tennis has kind of been revitalized or something. I don't know, pickleball I think helps too, but these courts, like when we were kids, they never got used. Apparently there used to be a tennis club there, but then everything shut down, and then they took that one away. And those courts are always getting used, like all times of the day. If you drive by, there's always people there. So it's popular.
Any other questions from committee? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and more of a comment to the delegation. Appreciate you coming forward. You have been in discussion with me on this, and I did take a tour to Tilsonburg one day to check out that, and that is a great facility. And what I like about the idea is multi-purpose. But I think part of the cost that was put into Tilsonburg was the underground pipes for refrigeration, and that's where the costs lie. And it is not quite as big as a full-size ice surface. So I think there's merit and for it, and also that park is well used. I go by there quite often. I was by there earlier this morning. It's used, and Mount Pleasant will grow in a few years, because now that the water's been lifted up to the heights in that area, it will grow.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. So I think there's also something similar in Princeton. I don't know if it holds ice, but I'm going to check the next time I'm there. But my question is more of like a kind of a practical question. So you said that the current rink that you guys set up is on the ball diamond. I'm assuming in the summertime that ball diamond is used. And if so, is there extra maintenance and repair that has to be done to the diamond every spring? Like, how does the ice on there through the winter impact the diamond underneath when you're trying to kind of balance the use of both?
It mostly melts away. And they just come in and grade the ball diamond, which they do every other year, so there's no impact to the ball diamond.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was any like compaction issues at all, but if they're graded, then it's probably okay.
I'm not a geologist, I don't know.
Any other questions from committee? Councillor McAlpine?
This is kind of off topic a little bit, but is there lighting in the ball diamond at this point at night? Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
How does committee want to move forward?
Thank you.
Councillor Coleman?
Motion received, Mr. Mayor, or Chair.
Mayor Bailey seconds. Any questions? Councillor Coleman?
We're just reminded, refer it to staff for budget.
Seconder's good with that. And any other questions on that? Councillor Miller?
I like the staff could have a look at, because there's a bunch of moving pieces from washrooms. Is there adequate parking, and will we get the land behind it? So I think, I like the idea of the multi-use pad, but I think there needs to be a cohesive plan.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, no other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chambers?
Could I ask that the fans either be slowed down or turned off? I don't know whether it's me or any, but it's cold, and that thing is bothering my bald head that I wish it wasn't there, to be honest with you. I'm gonna have to get my coat.
We'll get our best guy on it. We're good. Thanks, Gary. All those in favor? Okay. All right, so that's it for our delegations today. So moving on to section 5.1, adoption of the previous minutes. Can I get a mover? Councillor Howes, Councillor Bell, questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Section 6, any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, moving on. Section 7, consent items. We have 1, 2, 3. We have 3. No. Nope. 7-1, 7-1-1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 consent items to be approved. Can I get a mover for all of them? Councillor Chambers, anybody wanting pulled? Councillor Chambers? No, you're approving them all? Councillor Miller?
7.1.4, and I'll just point out, Mr. Chair, too, when we have the admin and op meeting Tuesday morning and Monday's a holiday, you can't get any answers before the meeting, so, 7.1.4.
Anybody else want anything else pulled? Okay, so we've got a mover by Councillor Chambers, seconded by Councillor Coleman, for everything but 7.1.4. All in favor? Opposed? Those are carried. Councillor Miller, 7.1.4.
Yeah, just, reading the report, just a couple questions I did not see I couldn't figure it out from the report, but is the 1.7 million, is that for single surface treatment, year 1 gravel to hard top, and year 2 gravel to hard top work? Is that for all the work listed in the report?
Who's best to answer that?
Mark, do you want to speak to that? Okay.
Preparing. Just bear with us, Councillor Miller. Okay, committee, what we're gonna do is, while we're looking for the answer for that, we're gonna jump ahead to 7.2 for consent items to be received. Anybody want any of the consent items to be received, to be pulled? Can I get a mover for them all? Councillor Oakley, Mayor Bailey. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Those are carried to receive. What do we think, guys? Carry on? We'll come back to, you're gonna get the answer? No, we have it. You have it? Okay, so we're gonna circle back to 7.1.4.
Okay, so through the chair to, I believe that was Councillor Miller.
Councilor Miller, yeah.
So it does include the second surface for the works done last year. So there's the attachment volume roads map list there. And then it also includes the first application for single surface treatment this year. And then there's 2 items, Lost Mile Road and Mulligan Road, for gravel to hardtop conversions. So it's the entire list detailed in the map, and then there's also a list attached as well.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So just to follow up, so with the 1.7 million, do we know what percentage or what amount of that is gas tax money?
I do not.
Heather? You're stumping the staff, Councilor Miller. I like that. Just bear with us here, folks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in 2025, what was approved for gas tax was Kelvin resurfacing and Dumfries Street. So I don't know how that cross-referenced with the project, neither one of those? Okay.
Well, okay, maybe the specific amount is important, but the fact of the matter is that there's gas tax money involved generally with these?
Through the chair, sometimes we usually try to apply them to the larger road projects that have higher volume.
Okay. I guess where I'm going, Mr. Chair, well, I'll have to ask staff this, but generally, once you've done a gravel road, the maintenance on that hardtop surface is much lower than a gravel road. Is that correct?
Okay. So through the chair, I'll answer your first question about using gas tax. Typically, gas tax, as was mentioned, is applied to larger projects because we have to report on it and put up signage. So to use gas tax on the low volume roads, the amount of signage we would have to put out across the county wouldn't be worthwhile to do so. So that is why we typically use that gas tax money on bridges and larger paving projects, because it's just easier on the reporting end and doing up all the signage and everything that goes along with it.
Okay.
So we don't typically use it for the low volume roads.
But the gas tax goes in a big pot, and you're just saying, for practical purpose, let's not go.
Yes.
Okay. But maintenance of a road was gravel, converted to hardtop, do you know how much cheaper it is per kilometer for maintenance?
Sorry, through the chair, I don't know numbers. I just know based on information that's out there in the industry. And once you get over 100 ADT, it typically is less expensive for us to actually hard surface the road than it is to keep it as gravel.
It's less expensive to hard top
Yes,
it, okay.
and that's why, like, through our conversion program, that's why we're working towards, like, that's why the 100 ADT was included as one of the numbers of the metric to try to convert those roads. And it's just a matter of, it's gonna take us time to get through them all because of the amount of money that's been budgeted to do so, right? Like, we're following the program that was approved a few years ago, and phase one is noted as taking 13 years to accomplish based on what was agreed to by council and approved.
But what you're saying, I think, is it's a good investment.
Through the chair, you are correct, sir.
Okay, so reading this, the only thing that's being done this year is 1.8 kilometers for Lost Mile Road, 2 kilometers for Mulligan, so add them up, 3.8 kilometers. That's all the new things that are being done for 2025.
Through the chair, that is correct for conversions, and then there's also a portion of the funding that's available has to do the single surface on the previous year as well.
Okay. Is it possible maybe in a Friday file or a report or something through you, Mr. Chair, to know how much we've got left? Just the general, because we're still getting the emails, the phone calls. When's my road going to be done? When's my road going to be done? When's my road going to be done? And I would, periodically, we did get updates on that from staff. I haven't had one in a while. I'm just wondering if we could see that.
Through the chair, it's actually, we are planning on doing an update. We're reviewing all the ADTs on the remaining roads, verifying that what was proposed a few years ago as phase one and phase two is still accurate. And then also, just an update as to how much we've done and then what is left to do.
Okay, through Chair. Thank you, Mark, and I know you're getting the emails too, or quite a few of them, so. The people that don't have it, they're still wanting it, so, okay, that's good, thank you.
Okay, to 7.1.4?
Just along the same, just a comment to Councillor Miller's comment with regard to people, it's a common thing for people to ask councillors, when are you going to pave my road? And I've been having to tell people soon for 40 years in some cases. So, and it's embarrassing to tell you the truth. So this is something that I think when we look at the funding and there's a tax, a tender savings, that money shouldn't be going elsewhere. It should be going to surfacing roads, in my opinion, because some of you may be on here for 40 more years and you're going to have to be still telling people that, yeah, we'll get your road paved soon, but I would like to be able to say, we finally got all the roads paved, and then those questions wouldn't be asked. So just a comment, because it is a common, constant thing for people on gravel roads to want them paved, and I can't blame them a bit.
7.1.4? Are you on a gravel road?
I was. And I would be glad to go back to gravel road if I could get rid of the 11,000 vehicles a day on my road. My only comment is, Mr. Chair, is that it certainly cuts down on the number of phone calls a councillor gets when you get a conversion program of going from gravel to hard surface. And I got rid of an awful lot in the lower end of Onondaga, and it's much appreciated. And the roads that are going to get done this year will be much more appreciated again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so 7.1.4, no further questions on that. All in favor of 7.1.4? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to section 8, which is staff reports, RPT-0203-25, housekeeping bylaw amendments. Can I get a mover? Councillor Bell, Councillor Coleman. Greg, do you want to speak to it or just answer questions? Okay, any questions for Mr. Bergeron? Councillor Bell.
Not so much a question as a comment and a thank you. I'm pleased to see the fourth item, which requires owners or occupants to clear any accumulation of organic debris from the sidewalk that may interfere with pedestrian travel and/or creates a potential hazard. I think I raised this last fall when I saw some pretty good examples or bad examples, depending on which way you look at it, of people failing to clear leaves off the sidewalks in front of their house. It does require some communication, so I presume there's going to be a communication program associated with this. Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions on the report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.2, RPT-0119-25, the Stormwater Utility Program update. I think Andrea wants to start us off with some words first. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Kyle, Councillor McAlpine.
Thank you. Is this on? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
As many of you likely remember, 2024 was, stormwater management was quite a hot topic of conversation here in the County of Brant. And it's been about a year since we've talked about stormwater, so I did want to come up here and say a few words about it. Over the last year, staff have been working really hard behind the scenes, both on the stormwater management operation and actioning some items from the stormwater utility. Both of these updates are provided in Report 0128 and RPT 0119, and I'd just like to do a year in review for you. The stormwater management system is a full system that controls stormwater in the County of Brant. This includes both stormwater infrastructure and municipal drains. For the purpose of our conversation today, we're going to be focusing on the stormwater infrastructure. As of 2024, the county's stormwater infrastructure count includes approximately 180 kilometers of storm sewers, 250 outlets, 5,400 structures, and 29 stormwater management facilities with a total asset value of $215 million. A summary of the 2024 stormwater management operations is included in the 2024 Annual Performance Report, which is RPT 0128, which is the second annual report that's been submitted to the MECP and the first full year of operations under the new ECA requirements. For the Environmental Services Division, the last 12 months have been a year of growth, team building, and program development. We hired new staff and restructured our programs to create program efficiency and redundancy. We developed the CLI ECA application process for alterations to the system, and we finalized the O&M manual required by the MECP. Staff implemented the stormwater management facility inspections and completed sediment surveys for all assumed ponds. Staff developed a storm sewer inspection program and CCTV'd 8 kilometers of sewer, having found 1 cross connection, 2 cross bores, and 11 spot repairs. Staff also developed an invasive species monitoring program, monitoring and control program. And in addition to all this work that's accomplished through the Environmental Services Division, the Roads Division also completed their annual culvert inspection and maintenance program, their catch basin maintenance, and their annual ditching programs, which is in support of the stormwater management program. As part of the ECA approval, you will also see newly installed signage at the 29 stormwater ponds that are operated and maintained by the County of Brant. This is a requirement of the ECA, but is also a reminder to residents about the presence of this infrastructure, a reminder of risks and safety, as well as the contact information in the event of an emergency. Now I'm going to provide you with a brief update on the proposed stormwater utility. Again, as many of us remember, in 2023 and 2024, staff developed a stormwater utility proposal and engaged with the community. The key points from this engagement were that residents were not very familiar with stormwater management, and they are not supportive of a dedicated funding source for the stormwater management program. The recommended next steps from the 2024 proposal was to reach out to municipalities that have stormwater utility programs implemented and gather information on lessons learned, to provide an enhanced education of stormwater infrastructure, which is often invisible to the community, and also complete a long-term financial plan assessment to provide more detailed revenue and reserve requirements to support the stormwater operating and capital budgets. All of these tasks were completed in the last year. Environmental Services team worked closely with the corporate communications team to develop online content to educate the community about the stormwater management system. This includes the stormwater landing page found at brant.ca/stormwater and the Report a Problem tool to encourage residents to inform us when there are stormwater-related issues. The corporate comms team also developed a series of 5 educational videos to help the community better understand stormwater management and infrastructure. These videos include Introduction to Stormwater, Life of a Raindrop, Wet and Dry Stormwater Ponds, Oil and Grit Separators, and the Charlton Park Stormwater Infiltration Facility. And all of these videos can be found at brant.ca/stormwater. I'd like to take a moment right now and to play one of these videos for you. This video is called Life of a Raindrop.
Let's follow this stream on journey through the stormwater management system and discover how we maintain each part to keep our environment healthy. As rain falls, it flows over surfaces like sidewalks and roads, picking up dirt, oil, and other pollutants. Our raindrop first enters the catch basin. This structure collects debris and sediment to prevent clogs in the system. Catch basins require regular cleaning and inspection to ensure they function properly. Removing debris helps avoid blockages and keeps pollutants out of our waters. Next, the water flows into the storm sewer system. These pipes carry the water to an area called managed water, reducing floodings. Maintaining storm sewer involves routine inspections and monitoring for blockages. Clearing any debris ensures smooth water flow and prevents backups. The raindrop then reaches the stormwater pond. Here, water is slowed down, allowing sediment to settle and pollutants to be absorbed by plants. To keep these ponds effective, regular maintenance is essential. This includes managing vegetation, inspecting inlets and outlets, and checking for sediment buildup. Finally, the water treatment system flows into a river or natural water course where it joins other waterways on its journey. By understanding and maintaining each component of our stormwater system, we protect our waterways, reduce flooding, and support all ecosystems. Learn more about stormwater management and infrastructure at brant.ca/stormwater.
I just want to give a big thank you to Evan Morrison and Matt DeHaan for all their work on creating these videos. I think they're going to be useful tools as we carry on this conversation with the community. As presented earlier this morning by BMA, staff completed a revenue requirements analysis for the stormwater management program. This detailed analysis outlines the projected operating and capital budget needs over the next 5 years and will be the basis for the development of a funding strategy. So to summarize, the Stormwater Management Program is the overarching program responsible to ensure the ongoing operation of the stormwater management system and is required by the MECP and summarized in the annual performance report, which is RPT 0128. The Stormwater Utility Program and Funding Strategy, which is RPT 0119, is a conversation about how to fund the operations and capital works for the stormwater management system. Much like the management of the water and wastewater systems, the operation and maintenance of the stormwater system is now a requirement of the MECP. Staff had made progress in 2024 on developing and implementing programs, as well as creating tools to assist in educating the public on the importance and function of the stormwater infrastructure. Similar to the long-term financial plans completed for water and wastewater, the stormwater revenue requirement analysis has detailed the required funding to support both the operating and capital budgets over the next 5 years. And the next step is to determine the proper funding strategy to financially support the stormwater management program to ensure the county is properly managing its infrastructure in a way that's fiscally responsible. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that. So I know we were kind of combining two reports there, 119 and 128, but the only one that's on the floor right now is 119 for the stormwater funding strategy. Is there any questions on that report to Andrea? Councillor Miller.
Just one, but I do have one on the next one as well. But Andrea, you mentioned the ECA. Does every stormwater management pond have an ECA, or is there one for all the ponds? How does that work?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Miller. Any pond that was constructed prior to the CLI ECA will have a separated ECA that is then combined into our CLI ECA. There's a separate section for it. It really depends on the timing of it, but each pond does have its own construction and monitoring requirements.
Okay, it's a little confusing. Do we do monitoring and sampling of any other pond other than the 403 Business Park Stormwater Management Pond?
Through you, Chair, yes, we do. We do monitoring and sampling of all ponds. Wet ponds specifically get sampling, but all dry and wet ponds do get annual inspection and monitoring.
But do they all sample for the same chemicals?
Through you, Chair. It depends on the requirements of that related ECA. Yes, it's a little bit complicated.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Andrea. Andrea, we had an interesting time up at the Cairnsville Community Centre about a year ago. I think Steve was there as well. Kind of got slightly diverted onto other things, but the message I took from that was the community is really not interested in a model that we have for water and wastewater. And to be honest, the scale of the stormwater management systems are an order of magnitude less than water and wastewater. So I wonder whether we need to go too far in terms of engaging again with the community. I think the model we have now works perfectly well. I think what was proposed earlier made great sense to slowly build up a reserve. I would encourage us not to spend a lot of time on this. There are other things more important, in my view, that we should be putting time to.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take a slightly different stance than Councillor Bell here. First of all, I think it was a great report. I actually, despite the sort of public backlash and lack of popularity, I still think the stormwater utility idea is something that should be explored. I think we had some conversation last time this was around the table, in particular with my rural colleagues, on how essentially a lot of rural property owners are being almost double dipped on because they have to pay for their stormwater management infrastructure, i.e. rural drains, individually, as opposed, and then still get dinged on their property tax bill for urban stormwater management. So I still think there's value in looking at this utility program. I think it's the most equitable way of handling things. And I also think it's a lot more transparent on what people are paying for. So that's just my 2 cents there, and I look forward to seeing what we come up with. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that report? Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, just a comment, and maybe Andrew can comment, and Lucas alluded to it. There is the issue of municipal drainage in the rural areas being paid by the property owners according to an engineer's assessment. We're all familiar with that. In some cases, that can be a lot of money, and some thousands of dollars in some cases, tens of thousands in some cases, to farmers that benefit by that. And usually they don't like it, but they deal with it. So the concern becomes, if the rural community is paying for a municipal drainage system and by them as individuals, and urban areas have a stormwater management system that is being paid by the general levy, then what I'll call the rural area is paying on the general levy and assisting with the urban costs. Urbans can't do that necessarily with the municipal drainage system because that's regulated by the Drainage Act. But there are things that the county does in rural areas that manage stormwater and is paid by the general levy. Road ditches. And sometimes road ditches have sediment areas, those kinds of things. So I think that the art will be, and I know there's a real backlash against what they call a rain tax, and it's not popular. So the way that we can perhaps mitigate that and leave status quo is not quite have status quo, but somehow provide the rural area with stormwater management systems that are paid by the general levy, if that makes sense. In some cases, tile drainage drains into road ditches. I don't think they're supposed to, but there's a lot of them that do. And that's part of, if the road ditches maintain, that's part of rural maintenance being paid by the general levy. So I think you're trying to, hopefully you can see what I'm getting at, is that you have to maybe offset the argument that rural people are paying for stormwater management for the urban people. Maybe they're not paying at all. Maybe there's benefits to the rural people by general levy as well. So that's one way of, I think, hopefully mitigating the backlash of rain taxes.
Through you, Chair, thank you for that comment. That's one thing that we have noticed through the initial proposal and all the engagement that was done, and we're really trying to balance out equity across a municipality like the County of Brant, much of which that's serviced through municipal drainage, and other areas that are serviced through more formal stormwater infrastructure. So what we're really trying to work on with this, the proposed stormwater funding strategy, is weighing out all the options and how for a community like the County of Brant, how can we make supporting this program equitable for everybody that's involved? I think Rob would like to add something as well.
Rob? Through the chair to committee. In a community like Brant, there's never going to be any perfect answer to this, that's for sure. But the main thing is you get a plan and you start following through in that plan. You build some reserves somehow, whether it's through the new fee or whether it's through taxation and the use of the Drainage Act. But I'm going to give you an example of two projects which are coming up where you're going to see some backlash no matter which way you go at this. And you've got drains coming up, the Cleaver Road drain, which is coming up, which has a big part of the Granville subdivision in it. Those owners are all going to get assessed on that unless we collect money through another way for them to pay their way in this one. So if we did do the stormwater fee, what we would do is we would use that reserve to cover their assessment on that drain. It won't be a lot per property, but none of them will understand that, no, we've got downstream requirements here. And in and around 1990, I stood in this council chambers to defend the northwest drain, which is just west of the fairgrounds. And there's a whole big subdivision there, which I'm sure the report isn't updated for all the parties that are now in there, because it was farm fields at the time, as to how that's actually even assessed out, and there'll be some maintenance needs to be done on that. Are we gonna do a new drain report on that and assess everybody on that under the Drainage Act to bring it up to speed? So you gotta think of all these things as you're making these decisions. None of them are easy decisions. Some of them are tough, but do the people that are in the urban areas want to pay, a small amount per month? And the average one, I know BMA has done some work that I've been involved with, something like $120 a year, sort of the average one across the whole province is would they rather pay that amount, or they rather get dinged in 10, 15 years for, $1,000, which is a lot harder for them to come up with. So think of the whole thing as you're making these decisions, and I think there are ways to deal with most of these problems, but it won't be perfect for everyone, that's for sure.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Chambers' comment about equity and fairness, there are an increasing number of people in the county who live in condominium complexes. And as one who used to but doesn't now, they pay separately for their garbage collection, and yet they pay for garbage collection in their council taxes. So there are quite a number of these issues, and I think once you start opening one up, then you need to be prepared to open up the rest. So the system we have now, I think, works. I don't think it's entirely unfair to anybody, and I would countenance that we've got more important things to get on with than opening up the stormwater utility system.
Okay. Any other questions on this report? 119? It is on the floor, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So 8.3, the RPT 0128-25, the 2024 Annual Performance Report. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Coleman? Councillor Kyle, thank you. Questions on that report? On the 118 or 120 report, you want to speak to that as well, or you already have?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Miller?
A couple questions about some of those samplings. If I look at the 403 Business Park, you see, they said there's copper. When they look at it, there's copper, molybdenum, aluminum in that. Would I be correct in assuming that that would have come from one of the tenants in the park? I don't know where that would come from.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. Obviously not enough to exceed provincial standards, I believe?
Correct.
Okay. And then water quality, again, of stormwater management ponds, and I know, I'm just going to go to page 268 of our report, because that's where it talks about it. We talked about phosphorus, and phosphorus is a big deal. Minimize existing phosphorus loadings to Lake Erie and its tributaries as compared to 2018 or conditions prior to the proposed development. So phosphorus is a big deal for those blooms and whatnot. Are we giving nitrogen its fair due as far as trying to minimize that or measuring for that? You talked about could all nitrogen, which I had to Google. I think that represents total nitrogen loading in the water. Do we measure always as much for nitrogen as we do for phosphorus, and are we paying attention to the nitrogen? Just simply because it's a tough thing to get out of the water.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Miller. Yeah, the monitoring requirements for each pond are outlined in the ECA, and those restrictions on those limits are outlined in there. So I would say that we are giving it its fair due.
Okay, okay. As far as when we see these, some of these elements or compounds getting quite high, well, what's the process? How would you, and I know obviously sodium gets quite high. How do we go about fixing that? What's the process?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Miller, it has to do with working with the inputs into those systems, right? So if we want to talk about Brant 403 Business Park as a good example, we work with the business owners to understand what their output into the pond is. We also use source water protection policy to manage the concerns in that pond in this specific instance because it's within the wellhead protection area for the Bethel Water Treatment Facility. So we do have policy in place, and leveraging our ECA requirements, we really do work with the property owners. If necessary, we can also use our sewer use bylaw. And there's some, I believe there's another bylaw as well through the enforcement team to manage environmental pollutants into the system.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that report, 128? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to 8.4, RPT-0114-25, Brant Sports Complex Expansion. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Coleman? Councillor Kyle? Questions? Where we I'm going to go back to Councillor Bell because you were the question on the last one. If you want to bring your question forward.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks to staff for doing all the hard work on this one, but I want to bring on the table the issue of affordability. And I think it highlights, the numbers that we saw highlights the need for a conversation on the debt limit that we're prepared to accept as a council. There are other issues, I think financial issues that we need to reflect on. I didn't see very much on operating costs. I don't know what the proposed solution does to operating costs. I presume that there will be some reflection of that in an updated business model. I think the only one I could find was 2017, 2018. So I'm looking for a response from staff about affordability. When we're going to have that conversation about debt limits, and I believe we should just hold off the decision-making until such time as we've gone through this conversation. Because our experience with the library was we spent $1-something million after we decided to basically accept the project in the middle of 2023, only to reverse ourselves later. I'd rather we are firm about if the price is this, we will go ahead with this project. If the price is as it is not acceptable, then let's stop it now.
Alice?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'll let General Manager Boyd speak to the specifics on debt limit, and that really is a council decision on what you're going to, what the appetite is to increase our debt threshold and what projects we're going to prioritize within that. I will say that we're looking, and Phil alluded to this a little bit in his presentation, that philosophically we're trying to take a different approach to major projects in that although we've included it in our capital forecast, we're not asking for any decision from council until we reach a certain level of the grant fundraising levels. So rather than asking for approval from council and moving forward and then applying for grants, we're trying to secure those grants ahead of time. For example, this project was in the 2025 capital, and we've moved it into 2026 because we didn't have any secured grant funding. So we're trying to, again, use a different approach in trying to get some of that money up front before any decisions are made that will affect the tax levy. Again, I'll ask Heather Boyd to speak to some specifics on debt levels.
Thank you. Heather?
Thank you, through the chair. So the debt limit discussion is in the report. It does say that this specifically, this increase in the project cost will be, well, the whole project will be 0.79% of an increase to our debt limit. It doesn't take us over the self-imposed limit, but we do still project that we will probably be looking at having to have that discussion for the 2027 budget, I think is what we're still on track for. Question being, in terms of like, are we going to maintain that limit? When are we having that debt ceiling discussion? We are planning on bringing that back in the fall in advance of our next budget. And in terms of whether or not we can afford this project, I mean, afford is unfortunately, it's a subjective kind of thing. It's this project has been on the books for a number of years. I know that, in order to get this grant funding, to be eligible for it, that's kind of why we had the urgency to bring it forward at this time. But from here on out, it's a question of, do we wait longer for some of our DCs to start reserving for this project, look for fundraising, or do we also take the chance of costs going up again, possibly, at a faster pace than even we can raise money towards the work? So it's just a matter of priorities at this point. We would be moving forward with that discussion as part of the long-term plan review this fall, specifically for the $8 million increase. Well, yeah, the increase over where we were in our 2026 forecast. So, and that forecast number is what we used for the long-term plan as well.
Councillor Bell?
Quick question. What is the, what cost will we incur between now and the end of the year to complete the design? Ready for tendering.
Through the chair, so between now and the end of the year, we would incur the detailed design costs. It wouldn't be any of the contract administration piece, so just the detailed design.
How much is that, Phil?
Through the chair, I'll let Kathy give you the details on that. I don't have it at the top of my head.
Kathy?
Thank you, through the chair. So this project for the design, if we will recall in the budget, is about 1.95 million. We've already incurred about $700,000 in the pre-design. So there's probably, and this isn't exact, but probably in that $400,000 to $500,000 between now and the end of the year. During the construction period, the balance would be billed out to us, and through the post-construction period as well, through the warranty work.
Yeah, the challenge we have as a council now is do we spend that money or commit to spending that money, not knowing whether we can ultimately afford the project at its elevated cost, given that we don't know that we're going to get any grants or funding from outside of normal tax routes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. And we're going to run into this with all of our major projects in terms of a bit of a chicken and egg scenario in applying for grants. So we need to be, depending on the funding stream, we need to be so far along in the project in order to be eligible for the grant. Again, it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, but I think philosophically, again, council needs to decide whether this is a project they want to go forward with. If it is, we will go quite aggressively in our applications, but they need to be at a certain point in order to be eligible for that grant funding.
Councillor Howes, then Councillor McAlpine.
And I appreciate the fact that Councillor Bell is giving this the same scrutiny that he gave the library project, and I do respect and appreciate that. And I'm also paying attention to our CAO, who was saying that there is a different approach to this in terms of confirming funding from outside sources before giving any green lights. For the benefit of people who are watching this later or watching it now, could Heather speak a little bit more about the development charge side of things and why this isn't development charge eligible, or how much of it is? Like, I remember when we were talking about the library project, it was fairly clear that, you know, we were anticipating this much money from this source and that source, and development charges were part of that. And I'm just wondering if Heather could talk a little bit about that, please.
Heather?
Looking at the list of where the money's coming from, it does look like about 18 million of this project is DC eligible. So obviously some of this being kind of a use that we don't have in the community right now, so there's going to be a significant benefit to existing, but there is about 17 million proposed from DCs and debt to be repaid from DCs.
Bear with me, Councillor McAlpine. I believe I missed Councillor Oakley, who had already had his hand up earlier.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I actually, Councillor Bell took my question. The only other quick question I would have is in regards to the parking, just ensuring that if we have any variances, so on and so forth, that we get that dealt with before we go to tender. Just to put that one out there. Thank you.
Councillor McAlpine.
So of that 17 to 18 million from development charges, have we collected a portion of that currently, or are we waiting for that for future development?
It looks like we are expecting over the term of our current DCs, so going through the construction period, that we will have about 9.4 collected by the end of this project, and that we will be looking at about 8.8 in debt to be recovered from future DCs.
And would you be able to, this is maybe for Allison, when it becomes for the grant, if you could elaborate a little bit more on at what point we are eligible for the grants?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. It really depends on the funding stream. So for this one, for example, Phil alluded to this, that it has a construction deadline. We always look to the ministry for what kind of flexibility they may or may not have for that. Fundraising component obviously is not quite as aggressive for this one. We always hope to get more, but we've tried to be sort of moderate with our approach to this one. But again, it depends on the funding stream. Some will require full approval by council, some will require certain level of approvals to be met, and some have sort of construction full built deadlines attached to them. For this one, we've already spoke about that we applied to, but it will be different for every stream.
Phil?
Yeah, through the chair, this is more directed to Councillor Bell. Nobody saw me waving over here, but one of the things that I wanted to mention, the design money that's spent between now and the end of the year, its value in that we have that design done, and assuming that within 2 to 3 years post completing it, that design will still hold up. The other piece to be aware of is that we have a contract with the architect and engineering team through to commissioning. So if we don't work through parts of the contract, we'll have certain obligations to work through as well. So I think just that, so that council knows there is value in having the design done as long as council's happy with the design that we're moving forward with.
Thank you. Anybody else for a question? Councillor Miller, then Councillor Chambers, then Councillor Bell.
Just a comment in that it was stated earlier that if this were built today, we would be probably at capacity with it, or darn near, within the next 1 or 2 years. Did I hear that correctly?
Through the chair, yeah, I think some of the, maybe some of the information I even didn't provide you before, I mean, it came back from Councillor McAlpine about the school use, right? Well, schools, we really can't get in there till after 6 o'clock at night, right? So this is actually giving us program capacity all day long, all evening, right? And it gives us a base amount. I think that within 5 years, depending on growth, we could max out, but hopefully our new partnerships or other opportunities will take up that extra bit. So that's reality of what we're proposing, and I want you to be fully aware of it.
Okay, thank you. And just, yeah, I mean, we see the growth, we see the number of houses coming, and I like the measured approach to it. If we approve it, we're proceeding cautiously, looking at all the costs, but all the grants and all the funding. So when it comes time for a vote, I'll be supporting option 3.
Councillor Chambers?
I'm actually kind of troubled by this because I still have the library in my mind here because there's a lot of parallels, as Councillor Bell said. And what I don't want to have happen is it down to the midnight decision point to pull the plug and do it, and then have it not pass and not be done. So I think it's important to, if we're not going to support the project when it is designed, then why design it? And in terms of affordability, if we can't afford it, why design it? And that, if that approach was taken with the library Bucket Center project, we would have been a lot of money ahead to invest in a project that may have been a higher priority. When I asked the delegation the philosophical question about whether we should be building centralized facilities or spreading the resources around the community, that's a decision we need to have a discussion about, because $10 million in this location, if you put that throughout the county, makes a lot of people happy as well. So I'm really troubled by the fact that I'm not sure that I can support, and I know people want it, I don't know whether people need 3 more pickleball courts and a half a basketball court and a full basketball court in a centralized area that will have ongoing operational costs as well. We do need the dressing rooms. That's something that I can approve in a snap of the fingers. But whether we want to build a facility state of art for pickleball and basketball, when we even have the Silaps over there that could be, that's a decision that I'm wrestling with, and I am going to ask that the one clause be voted on separately, and that's to whether we proceed with the design or not. But I just caution people, if you're not going to support it at the end, don't support it now before we plan it and take it right up to the midnight wire, spend $1 million on stuff that will end up sitting on a shelf not being realized. Take the $1 million and spread it around the community some other way. So with that having been said, I would like the operative clauses be voted on separately.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did ask a question about operating costs. In the 2019 report, there's an indication that the tax levy impact would be $560,000. Is there an update on that?
Heather?
I'm sorry, the annual tax levy impact, or are you looking at like the overall amount to be funded from taxes?
I'm looking at your the 2019 report, Project Financial Outlook, indicated that the anticipated operating budget would have a net levy effect of $560,000. And that was calculated in 2019.
So we did, yeah, so we did budget a few years ago, I don't know exactly which year, for this design work that's happening now. And I believe that that $500,000 was probably for that piece of it.
So you're saying that since 2019, our estimate has not changed?
For the work they're doing currently, I don't think there has been any change to the.
It's operating budget.
Or are you looking at the operating costs of the building, in which case I don't know what they're projecting for that.
That's my question.
Okay. No, I thought you were talking about I haven't seen, I don't have the 2019 report in front of me, so.
Yeah, so I mean, if it has gone up in the same ratio as the capital cost, then we're talking about doubling that number. And it's just another impact on the equation we have to consider as to whether we can afford this project or not. I have one more question, if I may, and then I'll stop.
Hang tight, Councillor Bell. Did you want to talk to that? Or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and we can certainly make sure that that would be part of the final estimates that would come back should this get approval today.
Okay, my final comment is really about the 1,100 responses we got, which I think is fabulous. It must be the best response to any survey we've ever put out. But I think the top response was, I'd like a swimming pool. And it's kind of flying in the face of public demand. If we're trying to meet a functional need, I think the message you got back from the community was, that's not what we want. Actually, what we want is a swimming pool. And, you know, we're kind of just driving down this road of providing gymnasium support, when in fact the community wants something different. How do we square that circle?
Anybody want to take a stab at that? Phil?
Well, through the chair, so when we went out to the public, it was quite clear in all of our engagement that this wasn't about the indoor pool. The fact of the matter is they put it in the responses anyways. So there is a high demand, but for all of the other, there's high demand for all of the other things we're providing in this facility. And I think that when you look at the programming list that we have attached and the different members of the community we're hitting, it's a wide range of activities, both social and recreational, that ties back into our rec master plans and all of the engagement that's been done long before I got here. So I'll let Kathy, I think she's got some more to add to it, but I think we recognize the pools, there's a strong demand for the pool, but we also recognize that the pool users may also be more vocal than some of the other rec users.
Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Just to provide Councillor Bell with an update on the operating cost, our revised budget for the operating cost is $328,000 approximately, based on the prices that we're going to be charging and the amount of rental hours, et cetera, that we forecast for that. In regards to the pool, just to add to that comments, is that we do have that in our long-range financial plan for a little bit further out when our population can support the operational cost, because it's probably in excess of $1 million on an operating cost. And the current tax base, as it sits with our population, is a difficult decision to try and support that, given our financial challenges on an operational level. So we feel that as the population grows, in the 2030 ranges, that we will have enough residents to better support that type of operation at that time.
Clear, then we're confident that the demand from our community for pickleball courts, basketball courts and volleyball courts is greater than the demand we would expect for a swimming pool. Can you say that conclusively, Kathy?
Personally, I can't say that. I think there's demand for all of these activities, including indoor turf, which Brantford's also looking at, as well as pools, which right now a lot of our residents do go to other communities, and everybody's struggling with all of these activities, trying to find a space for any of them.
Councillor Garneau, and then back to Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few observations and comments, and I think one of them is, as a council, we're continuing to have broader philosophical discussions on a case-by-case basis with specific files that come forward, and I hear a lot of the same concepts that were discussed in the consideration of the library, as well as the town hall, and I think one of the things that's challenging us is these are coming forward in an order that they're coming forward in, not necessarily based on how they've been prioritized by the community, but more about project timelines and kind of how they're coming together in an ad hoc basis. And what I'm starting to observe is in some ways we're building a kind of case-by-case decision-making framework, not dissimilar to the way like the courts use case law to inform future decisions. But I think where I'm continuing to be challenged on this is that we aren't really having those bigger picture questions where we can put all of these things on the table together and sort of hash out where do they rank for our community, because this is the third major capital project that falls within a certain ballpark of a very big expenditure. And we're alluding to some of the other things that have come before us, but we can't really figure out how to address it because we keep being pulled back into these concepts of the debt load and the project timeline and the DCs and whatnot. And I'm not sure that we're able to, because of the framework we're working within, fairly consider the projects. And I'm not entirely sure what I'm asking for so much as that I think more generally we as a council need to have that discussion and cognizant that our term of council is in the latter half, that we're running out of runway to maybe deal with some of these bigger picture questions that would then inform how we deal with the specific projects in front of us. Turning to the sports complex, I think Councillor Chambers asked a really good question of the folks from Mount Pleasant. And when I think of my residents, and to put the swimming lesson analogy on the table, depending on where you live in the east of the county, you go to Caledonia, Hamilton Mountain, or the city of Brantford for swimming lessons. And you would likely look to those communities as well for the other sports. So for me, it's challenging now if we're asking our questions about the financial viability of the broader project to make that investment, when we heard earlier today that a comparable sum of funds, and I know we're apples and oranges, could create what would be a very well-used space in a rural community on a shorter timeline.
Okay. Back to Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, through you, Mr. just a couple of comments based on the discussion. One, just because Councillor Garneau just touched on it, I think she is heading down the right path there in regards to that we do need to have that strategic planning conversation, something I know Councillor Bell has advocated for since the beginning of the term. Maybe at this point, it may be a little late in our term to consider that, unfortunately, but certainly something that should be definitely considered and done for the next term. And to sort of touch on Councillor Chambers' comments in regards to whether it's more effective to do sort of the piecemeal smaller projects in the individual communities or one larger project. I think one thing to highlight with this, yes, we have many basketball courts, pickleball courts, so on and so forth, but similar to our conversation here where there's a large demand for indoor pool, because we do have an outdoor pool in Paris. That was a decision that was made a couple terms of council ago to not invest in an indoor pool, instead maintain the outdoor pool. That facility is now very limited in scope in terms of when it can be used because it's outdoor facility. Similarly, investing in these indoor facilities would allow for year-round usage where otherwise, those pickleball and basketball courts have only seasonal usage. So I think that's part of the consideration here, where one of our major pinch points with the community is we don't have an indoor pool because while we do have an outdoor pool, it's very seasonal. This is a similar consideration here on the basketball and pickleball and tennis usage. This would be a year-round community investment. This also relates back to our budget decision we made this year to do a trial on creating a walking path in Lions Park for folks to use. This now would potentially usurp the need to do that outdoor maintenance that's a yearly operational cost, and instead have it invested in this facility. So I think that's should be part of our consideration here, is that this is really a very versatile year-round usage as opposed to some more of these seasonal outdoor facilities.
Good discussion. Anybody else? Mayor Bailey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't support this. I know that when we were talking about the library and when we were talking about the Bucket Center, someone said, we better not get any more arenas until all this other stuff has been figured out. I don't like, in my life, I don't like being so close to the line with money and being, I think we need to stop spending money, whether it's this to be the first thing we stop spending. And the pool right now, I don't know, someone was here the other day and said that they learned how to swim in Galt, is where I learned how to swim too, in Galt. Some things you have to get in the car and go 10 minutes, go 15 minutes. You can't have everything in your backyard. I think we're offering too much because we're asked too often. We need to get our house in order before we can keep doing things like cricket pitches and pickleball. You know what? They're making do with pickleball courses, or I don't know what they're called, the fields. They're all over the place, and people know how much room they need, and they're working it out amongst themselves. Personal people are buying pieces of property and laying out cricket pitches and stuff like that. So at some point, we have to stand back as a municipality and stop spending money just because they ask us. They keep asking us for things. And I mean, all of us would like everything, but we can't have everything. It's like the way we run our own properties and our own homes. I'd like to have all kinds of things. I've never ever had a fridge with an ice maker. Wouldn't I like that? Can't afford it, can't run the water line. You can't have it all just because you want it all. And I feel that we just keep not saying no. People know we don't want to say no. They know we don't want to say no. We want to give people that live in the county of Brant what they want. But at some point, we got to stop spending money. I can't support this any more than I couldn't support other things at this kind of a ticket. Right now, when we have so many little things, our downtown is ripped up here, and there's all kinds of work coming to all different parts of the county. We had a perfect delegation that just came, and for $1 million, we can keep an entire section of the county of Brant really happy. Mount Pleasant people are going to be happy. They asked for very little, And why don't we just keep doing that a couple times a year and making little groups or little hubs of the county happy instead of having all this stuff going through committee, coming back to committee. Now we're going to find out what it costs to see what color it's going to be. I can't support it. We need to stop spending big money and focus on how many people we can please for lesser amounts of money. Thank you.
Okay. So, final word, Councillor Howes.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, and there's a lot of good discussion, and and to me, it's never been about, you know, if you don't support the library, you can't support the arena. The community has needs. I respect what everyone's saying. I respect what the mayor is saying about us taking a cautious approach to spending. I wanted to just add a reminder, though, that we need to have those conversations also at the time when we're reviewing and approving master plans. We had a recreation master plan come to us within the last 2 years, I think it was, and it very clearly mapped out, you know, these are the types of commitments we're planning, and so none of us can be completely shocked that these come along, and they are big dollars. And I agree, Councillor Garneau made a good point. Like, we need to have a broader conversation that maps all of these pieces out. Councillor Bell's mentioned that in meetings past too, where we map out how do we achieve all this, which things need to be pushed down the line. A community that's growing this much, I believe, should have a place where people can play basketball and they can play indoor pickleball, and that's part. You know, the indoor swimming pool is a whole other conversation. But yeah. So I just think I'm respectful of staff who we support and agree on and approve a recreation master plan. And then we kind of balk when a critical part of that master plan comes to the table saying, okay, folks, we've done the study. Here's what it's going to cost. There's 3 options. We're taking the cheapest one. So anyway, those are just my thoughts on this.
Okay. Allison?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That actually was, at least in part, a recommendation that came forward from Heather Boyd with the last iteration and update on the long-term financial plan, is that these master plans would be approved in theory. However, the implementation of them and the capital projects contained therein would come forward sort of on an annual basis once they're modeled in the long-term financial plan. So it would be sort of slight deviation, but with a lot of impact, I think, on how we make decisions as we move forward now that we have that model in place. So that, as you're suggesting, is exactly how we do plan to proceed in the implementation of these larger plans.
Okay, so I said Councillor Howes was going to get the last word, and I kind of fit because I'm going to have the last word here. Was good conversation on it. A couple things I'm going to say. If we look back when the Brant Sports Complex was built, the initial renderings of that was 2 pads of ice and a swimming pool. And at that time, there was a decision made that was a little bit too much money. We're going to bring it down. And at that point in time, there was a cry for an indoor pool. There still is. We get that. But then we found that years down the road, it is much more money to add something like the pool to the sports complex than it. Mom and Dad. There we go. We'll interrupt for that.
Their ringer overrides my silent, so I'm sorry.
So, no, and that's good. I'm glad to hear that. So where I'm going with this is the fact that if we look back now, would it have been cheaper at the time to add the pool? Yes, it would have. There was a decision made that wasn't going to be the choice at that time. Now, when we look back at it, maybe it would have been the better decision because now it's probably double, triple the price to add the pool to it, as we know. I can tell you, even from the dressing room part of things, and I know we got some guys in the back there that'll definitely attest with this, like 150 million% we need more dressing rooms at that complex, for sure. That's without a doubt. It's also been said that if we look at this, it's a full year round. It's not just something that's going to be used in the summertime. And it also allows us to do other things in there, like potentially, you know, heaven forbid if we do, but it could be an evacuation center or something like that. There's multiple things that this can be used for. And yes, it's going to be spending some money. We've already spent some money on it to get to where we are today. And as was alluded to, there's probably another 500,000 or so to get us to the point where it's a yes or no answer. What I do like about this is the fact that it's going to come back to us when we're at the point of, okay, you know, we've got this much solidified in grants. This is where we're at. This is going to be the price tag on it. And then you take what Phil said in regards to, eventually this is going to happen. Whether it's now or whether it's 3 or 4 years down the road, we will have the drawings in order to do something. But as I just alluded to with the pool, if we move ourselves 3 or 4 years down the road, you can probably tack another few $1 million onto it. So it's a definite catch-22. I appreciate all the comments that have been had. And that's one of the things I appreciate about this council is the fact that we do have these conversations. It's not just a quick decision, yes or no. Everybody has their chance to say things. Everybody around the table was involved in the conversation, which is good. It should be. But I think definitely if we look at the population in the county, we are growing. And we're going to continue to grow over the next probably 5 to 10 years. And these folks are going to want different things that we don't have. And a lot of these things we don't have an indoor facility for any of these. Pickleball, volleyball tournaments that can happen, all that kind of stuff. So again, I think I appreciate the comments had about the money and stuff like that, but we also have to look at, as a community, you're right, Mr. Mayor, we want to give them things that they want and what they're asking for and stuff like that. So do we wait and it costs more, or do we do it now when it's cost less and it might not be favorable to everybody? And as was alluded to earlier, we're not going to please everybody. So that being said, that's going to be the final word on this. It is moved and seconded. What I'm going to do is I am going to read this out so everybody is clear on what we're voting for here. Okay, so the RPT 0114-25 Brant Sports Complex expansion design options report to be received as information, and that staff be directed to proceed with option 3, preferred design as described in the report, and that staff be directed to pursue all funding opportunities and commence with community fundraising, and that staff be directed to work with MJMA architects to complete the design, and that staff bring a final design cost estimate complete with grant application results, a fundraising update to council for final approval prior to tending construction. Okay? So everybody's clear at what we're voting on? And Councillor Chambers requested to separate them, to vote on them individually. Councillor Chambers? Are you still wanting that? Okay. Okay. So we are going to call the question on the entire, what's being passed or what's being voted on here. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries 6-5. Okay. Okay, moving on to 8.5, which is RPT 0215-25, water and wastewater rate, July 2025 to June 30th, 2025. Can I get a mover? Mayor Bailey, seconder. Councillor Kyle, thank you. Heather, did you want to speak to it or just answer any questions to the report? Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Be a question for Heather when she comes up. Heather, if my maths, that's the English version of math, is correct, I think the volumetric rates for both water and wastewater have increased by, for the next year, will be 18% more than they were last year. Is that correct?
Through the chair, I haven't done that specific calculation. Overall, the split between volumetric and fixed has been decreased for water and stays at the same percentage split for wastewater. I can do that calculation if required.
Yeah, so my calculation for water is that it's gone up by 18%. And it's kind of lost in the calculation. When you said that the increase for 2025 was fairly limited, I can't remember what exactly the number was, is that assuming that 2025 is half the money is spent on the previous rate structure and half on the new rate structure?
Through the chair. Overall, the combined increase for the residential user is 4.8%. I'm not.
Then I struggle. Maybe my maths are out, because I think it's twice that number. I think the volumetric rate has gone up from, and I'll take the 0 to 15 cubic meters per month, from $2.22 to $2.63, which is 18%. So that's, if you add that to the slightly reduced fixed rate, but increased fixed rate for wastewater and an 8% increase in volumetric rate for wastewater, it's a bigger number than the number you've given me, unless we're equating half the year on the last rate, on the current rates, and the second half of the year on the future rates.
Through the chair, there is, like, it is a July start, so there is that kind of increase on the second half of the year. That being said, the following years are still at that same kind of 5.5% on the residential. It is, you have to look at it as on a typical user basis. Like, you can't, the rates are set and is driven by a complete model as to how to get to the revenue required and what needs to be in each of those components.
Yeah, I'm concerned the numbers are, if I look at the change in wastewater rates, or let me just take wastewater rates, the volumetric rate goes from the July 2025 to June 29, the increase is 32% over that period. I mean, there's some huge numbers in there that kind of get lost in the rounding up on the average user. I'm concerned we're putting in some very big changes here that seem to be just flying under the radar. And I think if you add it to our 6-point-some% increase for property taxes, next year forecast at 13%, this is a huge increase. And I think we need to just step back a little and say, do we need to have all of these very large increases?
Through the chair, it is these are the revenues that are required to support the capital program and the operating costs of the systems.
So again, just going back to the earlier conversation about what we can afford and what we can't afford, are we comfortable that indeed we're going to have to spend this money in this period, because it is starting to roll up into something very large that impacts the individual user, and particularly in the case of water and wastewater, it affects the smaller user, it affects the people on lower incomes to a much greater extent. And I think this is just compounding a problem that we've set in motion. And I think we need to perhaps just step back and see it in its entirety. I'd like to see this brought back to council in a broader fashion that talks about property taxes and water and wastewater rates, so we give a clear impression to our residents of what they're paying for services which are delivered to them by or expected from the county.
I think Heather Boyd wants to jump in here.
Thank you, through the chair. Because water and wastewater, they are not something that we can subsidize through taxes. So the cost of providing the water and wastewater are the cost of providing the water and wastewater. There's not discretionary projects we can move. There's not things that we can just shift around and reallocate where it's coming from. So it is a bit different than taxes where there's discretionary items. The only things that could be considering is the timing of the capital projects, but certainly anything with that would get dealt with as we go forward. And we could make adjustments if we did have a savings in one of our major projects or something. But at this point, we need these rates, or else our capital systems, I think both of these, our reserves are not in great shape. So we do need to be investing in water and wastewater and pushing this to a later point to consider it in the greater context of taxes. I don't know that that actually saves anything except keeps us at the lower rates artificially, so we'll probably need even higher rates when we get there.
More about the transparency of what we're asking our residents to pay. Just go back, the increase in the volumetric rate for wastewater is between now and the end of this next 4-year period is 32%. That's a huge number. Added to which we're actually increasing the fixed rate by 30%. And I think we need to be able to explain why we have such high numbers. You know, we're forecasting them now. Let's tell the community what is causing that cost to be necessary and whether we've fully examined whether or not we can push some of those costs away into the future. I remember when we had the conversation with Andrea a few weeks ago about the capacity of the Paris water treatment plant, because on one day last year it actually handled almost double what we rated at. So do we really understand what our capacity limits are and when we need to add additional capacity? Because that's all rolling back into additional costs to our community. And I think we need to just stop. Let's have a fulsome discussion about it. Let's understand whether this is all necessary now or in the time frame that we've indicated, and what would be the impact of pushing it back a little further.
Councillor Miller?
I just want to ask about the engagement comments, and this is on page 540 for anybody following along in their agenda. Representative comments, maybe this speaks to what Councillor Bell was talking about, but the first one was, if our family experiences any further increases in our property taxes, water charges, et cetera, we will be on the brink of losing our home. My question is, well, first of all, it's a disturbing comment to read, but what I may be more disturbed by, that's a representative comment. My question is, were there a lot of others of a similar nature to that?
Through the chair. Not quite that dramatic, but the affordability is a key component of the respondents that did complete the survey.
Okay. It'd be nice if that person could actually come to council and speak to us. Notwithstanding the addition that may well go ahead for the Brant Sports Complex, and notwithstanding the potential for an added monthly fee for stormwater management, which we also talked about today, I do appreciate the fact that it is getting very tough. It's getting very tough for residents, some of them to make it. Unfortunately, wastewater, and I like, Heather, the way you framed it, I mean, the cost is the cost. The users have to pay it. That's just the nature of the beast. But keep in mind that, yeah, at one time, the province did step in. They helped out a lot with these infrastructure projects. And as I learned at OSUM, ratepayers, property taxpayers in the province are subsidizing provincial costs to the tune of $5 billion a year. And I'm not saying that they're entirely to blame, but I think they carry a large shoulder of, this is the growth, this is what you have to do, figure out a way to do it. But unfortunately, the only way to do it is just to keep passing the cost down and passing them on. And I don't know what the solution is, other than very frustrated. And we got to be very cognizant of maybe more people like that who are in that same same boat as that first comment.
Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Just sort of on Councillor Bell's, Councillor Miller's comments here, on sort of the larger picture of affordability with property taxes, wastewater charges, so on and so forth. I believe earlier in this term, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we did have a report, we did discuss the option for folks who are on a lower affordability or a lower income, being able to waive or defer increases in property taxes, and we chose not to go that route. But that is still something that's available and on the table for us to do if our concern is with the lower income folks being stretched as they clearly are. That still is an option for us to consider at a later point, in that we could choose to defer or waive property tax increases for those who are most burdened by it, recognizing, as we've previously had conversation about how property taxation is fairly regressive forms of taxation.
Allison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an item of clarification. So that was not actually brought forward as a decision. I believe the question was asked. We already have such a program, so seniors can apply to actually for that, but it's a one-time sort of program. And Heather might be able to speak to more specifics, but we do have it currently.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, we've got it moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, moving on to section 9, committee reports, Accessibility Advisory Committee. Can I get a mover? Councillor Kyle, Mayor Bailey, questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Brant Heritage Committee report. Can I get a mover? Councillor McAlpine, Councillor Howes. Questions? Councillor Miller.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, there was a presenter, Clayton Barker, and he mentioned somebody stealing a lot of the historical plaques in Burford. And I was just asking, is this occurring in other parts of the county? And I don't know, are the OPP aware of it? Was that talked about at Police Services?
I can tell you it was not talked about at Police Services to my knowledge. We've got one coming up this week.
Okay.
Tomorrow. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just tomorrow.
Well, as you can appreciate, it's very frustrating. You drive by the cenotaph, beautiful plaques out there for years and years and years, gone, right? Somebody's come along with some tools, removed it. In other historical plaques, these plaques, and they're taken, I believe, for their metallic, the metal value there. But it's frustrating because they're not cheap to make. They're customized, right, with writing and engraving and all that. So if anybody's aware of it happening elsewhere, just bringing it to your attention there, Mr. Chair.
I will definitely ask the question of Police Services as well.
Yeah, like I say, very, very, very frustrating. And I know there's programs with these scrap metal dealers. I got to show my license every time I go in, so hopefully we can catch them.
Councillor Howes, you put your hand up to respond to that, or you? No?
Sorry, I thought Councillor Miller was asking a question of the Heritage Committee. I was prepared to answer, but it was directed to the Police Services Board, which you covered. Thanks.
Okay. So, any other questions on that? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Section 10, Communications, 10.1, Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Correspondence, Rebill 17 Project, Ontario Build Faster and Smarter Act. Councillor Miller? Seconder. Councillor Oakley, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Nobody said anything about other business. Does anybody have anything now that's come up? Mayor Bailey?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to let everyone know that yesterday I had the opportunity to go to Home Depot in Cambridge, almost on Pine Bush Road near 401 off Franklin Boulevard. And I have all the respect in the world for our planners now because it's a parking lot and a mall that doesn't work. It doesn't have enough room to turn around. It doesn't have enough room to back out. It was obviously a parking lot that wasn't well planned, and I've never really noticed parking lots that weren't well planned until yesterday, because I'm talking about parking lots in the county and working through with our planners how to fix a couple of problems. And so I invite anyone who wants to see what a bad parking lot looks like that doesn't work to go to Home Depot in Cambridge and try to back out. Thank you.
Okay, we're going into camera, and we are going in camera to discuss two reports, which is RPT-0205-25, the Bucket Center update, and RPT-0217-25, a citizen appointment to the library board. Mover to go in camera. Councillor Oakley, Councillor Coleman. We're going to take about 30 seconds to clear the room. Thanks, folks. Okay, we are back in open session. We do have one thing we need to ratify in open session, and that is the citizen appointment to the library board. There was a motion put forward to put Susan Eddy, and it was seconded. So we will, that was Councillor Coleman, Councillor Garneau. We will ratify that in open session. So all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, I see nothing else on the agenda. Next meeting will be next month, I guess. But thank you. It's been a long day. Councillor Chambers, last word. Speak into your mic, Councillor Chambers.
The Library Act specifically says that the board member has to be a resident of the municipality for which the board is established in the case of a public library board.
Perfect.